As the remains of the Grixian cruisers scattered across Earth's orbit, Commander Vrax retreated to his command chamber, mandibles clicking in agitation. This was unprecedented. The intelligence reports had classified humans as pre-FTL primitives with limited orbital capabilities. Nothing had indicated they possessed kinetic weapons of such devastating power. "Status report," he demanded, his voice uncharacteristically tense. His second-in-command, Sub-Commander Arxel, approached with visible hesitation. "3 cruisers lost, Commander. 2 more heavily damaged. The human projectiles appear to be simple tungsten rods, but accelerated to near-relativistic speeds. Impossible. Their technological level cannot. The humans have been concealing their true capabilities," Arxel interrupted, displaying holographic schematics captured from Earth's defense network. "They disguise their weapon platforms as communication satellites. There are hundreds more in various orbits." Vrax's outer membrane pulsed with rage. Deception was not a tactic the Empire typically encountered. Most species proudly displayed their military might, making them easy to assess and overwhelm. These humans were different. In the UN bunker, General Okafor moved swiftly between holographic displays, showing the aftermath of their first counterattack. The gambit had worked. Project Thunderbolt, hidden in plain sight for decades as weather and communication satellites, had proven effective against alien shields. "They're regrouping," reported Colonel Takahashi, her tactical officer. "Infrared shows their remaining vessels moving to a defensive formation. They didn't expect resistance." Okafor nodded grimly. "We've bloodied their nose, but this is just beginning. Activate Phase 2 before they adapt." Across Earth, dormant military systems awakened. What the Grixians had dismissed as primitive nuclear missile silos were revealed as something far more innovative. Deep underground, electromagnetic launch systems powered up, preparing to deliver specialized EMP warheads designed to disable rather than destroy. From his flagship, Vrax watched in growing unease as his fleet reorganized. The Empire's protocol for unexpected resistance was clear: overwhelming force. He ordered the deployment of atmospheric assault craft, sleek, predatory vessels designed to strike terror with their very appearance. "Target their largest population centers," he commanded. Standard intimidation pattern. As the assault craft entered Earth's atmosphere, they encountered something no Imperial force had faced before: a perfectly coordinated electromagnetic pulse wave that swept across continents. The carefully timed EMP bursts, generated from hidden facilities on every continent, washed over the Grixian craft. One by one, the assault ships faltered, their advanced navigation systems overwhelmed by the crude but effective electromagnetic attack. Several crashed into uninhabited areas, while others managed emergency landings, exactly as General Okafor had planned. "Capture any survivors," she ordered over the secure global command network. "And secure those ships intact. We need their technology." Vrax stared in disbelief at the tactical display, showing his assault force scattered across Earth's surface. For the first time in the Empire's long history of conquest, a first-strike force had been completely neutralized without achieving a single objective. "This," he murmured, "will not be a standard subjugation." The human resistance had only just begun, and already they had changed the rules of engagement. The Empire had arrived expecting to find prey, but had instead awakened a planet of predators who had spent their entire history preparing for this moment, even if they hadn't known it themselves. Commander Koval limped through the wreckage of what had once been his forward command post in the heart of New Delhi. His exoskeleton was cracked, leaking vital fluids that crystallized in the humid air. 3 days into what should have been a routine occupation, his battalion of elite shock troops had been reduced to less than half strength. "Status of the northern perimeter," he demanded, his translator struggling to maintain its calm, synthetic tone. Lieutenant Srak gestured with his injured primary limb toward the holographic display. "The humans have withdrawn, Commander." But what, Lieutenant? "They didn't withdraw because we forced them back. They simply left. Our sensors indicate they're regrouping in these residential sectors." The display highlighted dozens of densely populated areas where Imperial forces hadn't yet penetrated. Kvol's breathing apparatus hissed with frustration. They're using their own population as shields. No, sir, Drak corrected carefully. The civilian populations are evacuating ahead of our advances, but the resistance fighters move among the buildings freely. They appear to be welcomed. This violated every principle of planetary subjugation in the Imperial Manual. Subject species always protected their military assets first, civilians second. Humans were doing the opposite, evacuating civilians while their fighters remained mobile, using the empty urban landscape as a weapon itself. In her underground command center, Colonel Sharma watched the real-time battlefield displays with grim satisfaction. The network of civilian volunteers providing intelligence was working better than anyone had expected. Grandmothers with smartphones were proving more effective than military satellites as they reported Imperial troop movements before slipping away to designated shelter zones. Sector 12 is reporting the aliens have deployed some kind of chemical agent, her communications officer reported. Sharma nodded. Right on schedule. They're following standard counterinsurgency protocols, exactly the ones detailed in our own military manuals from the 2030s. Her psychological warfare specialist, Dr. Mehta, looked up from his workstation. That confirms our theory. They've studied our broadcast military doctrines, but don't realize how quickly our tactics evolve. They're fighting the last war, Sharma agreed. Deploy countermeasures according to Plan Echo. Across the city, hidden automated systems began dispersing the neutralizing compound that Dr. Mehta's team had developed after analyzing the composition of Imperial atmosphere suits. The compound wasn't lethal. It simply rendered their environmental seals brittle after extended exposure. Commander Kvol received the alert from his atmospheric analysis team with disbelief. All troops fall back to defensive positions immediately, he ordered. Environmental suit integrity compromised. Too late, he realized the humans had lured his forces into the exact positions they wanted them. As the Imperial troops consolidated into more defensible locations, precision strikes from hidden mortar positions rained down on them. The humans weren't trying to destroy his forces completely. They were hurting them, controlling their movements, dictating the terms of engagement. Kvol had commanded subjugation forces on 12 worlds. He had faced desperate last stands, suicidal charges, even religious zealots who believed their gods would protect them. He had never encountered an enemy that fought with such coordinated precision while appearing completely decentralized. Central Command, he transmitted to the orbiting flagship. Request immediate extraction and orbital bombardment. This position is untenable. The response came not from his superiors, but from Lieutenant Srak, his voice uncharacteristically agitated. Commander, our communications are being jammed. And the jamming signature, it's coming from our own equipment. The humans hadn't just adapted to Imperial technology. They had turned it against its makers. High Scholar Zingzar's gelatinous form rippled with distress as he immersed deeper into human history. The holographic displays surrounding his meditation chamber flickered between scenes of ancient battles. Romans at Cannae, Mongols sweeping across Asia, the mechanized horror of the world wars, the drone conflicts of the early 21st century. Most remarkable, he dictated to his research log. Their military innovations accelerate during periods of actual combat. Other species develop weapons during peacetime preparation, but humans perfect their killing arts in real-time application. He focused particularly on one conflict, a guerrilla war in a tropical region where a technologically inferior force had defeated a superpower through sheer determination and adaptability. The parallels to the current situation were troubling. Admiral, he communicated to Kavax, I have identified a critical pattern. Humans respond to overwhelming force not with surrender, but with asymmetric innovation. The more we escalate, the more creative their resistance becomes. In the detention level, Admiral Kavax replayed the security footage of Captain Chen's escape for the 12th time. The human had used no special technology, no hidden weapons. He had simply observed the guard rotation patterns, identified structural weaknesses in his restraints, and executed a flawless plan that exploited the Imperial Guard's training. They were trained to respond to known threats in specific ways. Chen had deliberately triggered those responses, then used the predictability of their reactions against them. 7 elite Imperial Guards, killed with their own weapons by a single human who should have been physically outmatched. Even more disturbing was the expression on Chen's face throughout the escape, a focused calm that bordered on enjoyment. As if the combat itself was satisfying to him. "Play the interrogation footage again," Cathax ordered his adjutant. On screen, Chen sat relaxed despite his restraints. Asterisk, "You think humans fight because we're primitive. We fight because we refuse to submit." Asterisk. Cathax paused the footage, studying the human's expression. There was something there he had missed before, not just defiance, but absolute certainty. Captain James Chen moved silently through the ventilation system of the Imperial flagship, following the mental map he had constructed during his captivity. The Grixians relied too heavily on their security technology and not enough on basic physical barriers. Their ventilation ducts were designed for efficiency, not security, another exploitable weakness. He had already planted the quantum transmitter the Resistance had provided him before his capture. Now activated, it was broadcasting the ship's complete schematics and defensive systems to Earth. But Chen's mission wasn't just intelligence gathering. He reached his destination, a junction where command neural pathways intersected with the ship's life support systems. The Grixians had integrated their technology with their biology to an impressive degree. Unfortunately for them, this created vulnerabilities no purely mechanical system would have. Chen placed the specially designed bioelectronic disruptor against the pulsing neural conduit. Once activated, it would introduce subtle errors into the flagship's environmental systems. Nothing catastrophic enough to trigger emergency protocols, but enough to gradually degrade the crew's cognitive functions. "Let's see how well you fight with the equivalent of a bad head cold," Chen whispered, smiling as he activated the device. The humans weren't just fighting to survive. They were learning, adapting, and exploiting every weakness they discovered. War wasn't just something humans did. It was something they excelled at in ways the Empire had never imagined possible. Dr. Rodriguez stared at the holographic projection of the modified Grixian power cell, its internal structure now fully mapped after 3 weeks of painstaking analysis. What had initially appeared to be a crystalline battery was actually a miniature dimensional pocket, storing energy not through chemical reactions, but by folding space-time itself. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "They're not just ahead of us technologically. They're working from an entirely different scientific paradigm." Her colleague, Dr. Hideki Tanaka, looked up from his workstation, but not an incomprehensible one. "Their physics is still physics, just with principles we haven't discovered yet." Rodriguez nodded, making a final adjustment to the human-built replica they had constructed. The power cell was crude compared to the Grixian original, its efficiency barely 30% of the alien version, but it worked. And unlike the original, it could be manufactured using Earth's existing industrial infrastructure. "Begin production scale-up," she ordered. "I want these in the field within 7 days." Half a world away, in the ruins of Sydney, Commander Vrax surveyed the devastation his orbital strike had caused. The human city was now a smoldering crater, the orbital bombardment having reduced its gleaming towers to radioactive ash. It should have been a moment of satisfaction, a clear demonstration of Imperial power. Instead, Vrax felt a growing unease. The humans had sacrificed one of their major population centers to prove a point. They could hurt the Empire. The battle that had preceded the bombardment had seen an entire Imperial battalion wiped out by humans using weapons that somehow negated Grixian shields. Analysis of the recovered human weapons, his science officer reported, approaching with visible trepidation. Vrax examined the findings on the data tablet and felt his blood run cold. The humans hadn't just copied Grixian technology, they had modified it, adapted it to exploit weaknesses the Empire's engineers had never bothered to address, because no species had ever been able to replicate their technology quickly enough to matter. How? He demanded. How did they reverse engineer our phase plasma technology in weeks when it took the Empire centuries to develop? The science officer's voice was barely audible. They didn't reverse engineer it, Commander. They observed its effects, identified its principles, and then created their own version using entirely different mechanisms. It's innovative. Innovation. The word itself was almost pejorative in Imperial culture. Why innovate when you could simply appropriate the technologies of conquered species? The Empire had grown through assimilation, not invention, for millennia. In the makeshift command center beneath the Blue Mountains, Australian General Madison Cooper watched as her troops were equipped with the first batch of Rodriguez's plasma rifles. The weapons were heavier than their Grixian counterparts and required backpack power sources, but they worked. The aliens hit Sydney to send a message, she told her officers. We're going to hit back twice, it's hard to send our own. Her intelligence officer updated the tactical display. Grixian ground forces are consolidating at these 3 locations. Their shield frequencies remain unchanged. They still don't realize we can penetrate them. Cooper nodded grimly. They're used to species that take generations to adapt. We don't have that luxury. And they don't have that time. She pointed to the largest alien concentration. Strike here at dawn. No prisoners, no mercy. Show them what happens when they burn one of our cities. The Empire was learning a painful lesson. Destroying the human city eliminated infrastructure, but it didn't break human will. It focused it. Jian Wei felt the subtle vibration change as the HSS Audacity transitioned from FTL travel back to normal space. The stolen Imperial cruiser dropped out of hyperspace at the calculated coordinates, its modified engines purring with an efficiency the Grixian engineers had never achieved. Wei had spent his civilian career optimizing cargo ships for fuel efficiency, skills that translated surprisingly well to alien propulsion systems. Status report, he ordered, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were attempting. Humanity's first interstellar combat operation, deep in enemy territory, with a stolen vessel and a crew that had been training on alien systems for less than a month. All systems nominal. Captain, reported his XO, former Russian fighter pilot Irina Petrova. We're holding position behind the 5th moon as planned. Imperial Depot is registering no alert status. Wei nodded, studying the tactical display. The Alpha Centauri supply depot floated serenely against the starfield, its massive dock arms extending like a metallic sea creature. Dozens of Imperial supply ships moved in carefully choreographed patterns around it, delivering resources for the final assault on Earth. None of them suspected that the inevitable dominance, now renamed Audacity, had been captured. None of them would question its approach. Begin Phase 1, Wei ordered. Deep within the Audacity, Chief Engineer Marcus Lopes made the final adjustments to what his team affectionately called the party favors. The Grixian data cores they had gutted and repurposed now contained something far more dangerous than information. A virus designed by the best hackers on Earth, based on weaknesses identified in the Imperial operating systems. Package ready, Captain, he reported through the comm. Once we're plugged into their network, it'll spread faster than anything they've ever seen. The virus wasn't designed to destroy, at least not immediately. It would first replicate, spreading through the Imperial communication relays, embedding itself in system after system. Only after reaching critical mass would it activate, simultaneously disrupting Imperial communications, navigation, and weapons systems across an entire sector. Lopes patted the data core. Humans have been creating computer viruses since we barely had computers. Let's see how their systems handle a little chaos. In the depot's command center, Dockmaster Krivax noted the approach of the inevitable dominance with mild interest. The battlecruiser wasn't scheduled to arrive for another cycle, but schedule adjustments were common in wartime. Incoming transmission from the Dominants, his communications officer reported. They're requesting emergency docking, reporting engine instabilities requiring immediate maintenance. Krivax clicked his mandibles in annoyance. Assign them to Bay 12. Alert the technical division. The massive ship glided smoothly toward the assigned docking bay, showing none of the instabilities it had reported. But Krivax was already focused on other matters. The upcoming supply convoy to Earth needed his attention. The final subjugation of the human homeworld would bring him considerable prestige. He didn't notice when the docking clamps engage, nor when the maintenance access ports opened to allow the repair teams aboard. He remained oblivious when the first team of humans, wearing modified Imperial environmental suits, reached the central data hub and connected Lopez's virus-laden core. His first indication that something was wrong came 43 seconds later, when every alarm in the command center activated simultaneously. By then, it was already too late. The silence in the Imperial Council chamber was deafening. Emperor Xantar's translucent outer membrane pulsed with barely contained fury as reports continued to flow in. The Alpha Centauri depot lost, 3 more border systems in open rebellion, and worst of all, confirmed sightings of Imperial warships now flying human colors. The containment protocols have failed, Lord Ziv stated, his voice modulated to project calm despite the catastrophic news. The humans are not only using our technology, they're distributing it to other species. The Emperor's feeding tendrils writhed in agitation. How many systems are compromised? A holographic star map materialized in the center of the chamber, with red indicators spreading like a disease through the formerly secure Imperial holdings. Nearly a quarter of the Empire's outer territories now showed signs of rebellion or human infiltration. The humans are employing a strategy we've never encountered, Ziv continued. Instead of consolidating their gains, they're spreading thinly across multiple systems, focusing on liberating our subject species rather than claiming territory for themselves. Dr. Sarah Mbeki watched the Imperial Council's mounting panic with the detached interest of an anthropologist observing a fascinating cultural phenomenon. Despite being a prisoner, she found herself in the unprecedented position of witness to the inner workings of an interstellar empire in crisis. "You still don't understand, do you?" she said, drawing the Emperor's compound eyes toward her. "You keep analyzing this as a military problem, but it's an ideological one." The Emperor gestured, and the restraint field around Mbeki loosened enough to allow her to approach the star map. "Explain," he demanded. Mbeki pointed to the spreading indicators of rebellion. "Your empire functions on a simple premise: obedience through fear. For thousands of years, it worked because no species could hope to challenge your technological superiority. But humans," she smiled, "we don't fear what we can understand. And once we understand something, we can change it." She gestured to a particular system where rebellion had sprouted seemingly overnight. "The Axolotl here. You conquered them 3 centuries ago. They've been model subjects, yes, but not because they accepted your rule. They were waiting. All subject species have been waiting for proof that the Empire isn't invincible." In the secure communications chamber adjacent to the council room, General Thaxar received the latest intelligence report with growing horror. The humans weren't just spreading rebellion. They were systematically targeting the Empire's supply lines, production facilities, and communication relays. It wasn't the strategy of conquerors, it was the strategy of liberators. "The human female speaks truth," he admitted reluctantly to the Emperor upon returning to the council chamber. "We face not an army, but an idea. The subject species are rising not because the humans are defeating us militarily, but because the humans have shown them it's possible." The Emperor's feeding tendrils curled inward, a sign of profound distress among his kind. "Then we must eliminate the source of this contagion. Prepare the planet killer fleet." A ripple of shock passed through the council. The planet killers had been used only twice in Imperial history, against species too dangerous to be allowed continued existence. Dr. Mbeki laughed softly, drawing every alien gaze in the room. "You still don't get it. Even if you destroy Earth, you've already lost. Humanity isn't confined to one world anymore. We're in your ships, your systems, your subject worlds. You created an empire through fear. We're creating something new through hope." The Emperor stared at her with all 6 eyes, finally beginning to comprehend the true nature of the threat his empire faced. General Thomas O'Neill watched from the Bridge of the Liberty as the Vril battle swarms engaged the remaining Imperial forces in the Proxima system. The insectoid species fought with a ferocity that belied their previously submissive reputation under Imperial rule. Their crystalline ships, once forced to serve as Imperial mining vessels, had been quickly converted to combat craft with human-designed weapons. "Incredible," murmured his tactical officer, Lieutenant Rivera. "They've adapted our plasma lance designs to work with their hive mind navigation systems. Their coordination is unlike anything I've seen." O'Neill nodded. The Vril Queen had explained that her species possessed a form of collective consciousness that the Empire had suppressed with neural inhibitors for generations. Once those were removed, the Vril revealed capabilities that even the Empire had never suspected. "This is why we're winning," O'Neill said quietly. "The Empire saw subject species as resources to be exploited. They never bothered to understand what made each species unique, what gifts they might offer if treated as equals." On the Vril homeworld, Ambassador Kendra Washington stood before the assembled representatives of 7 formerly subjugated species. The meeting chamber, once an imperial governor's palace, had been transformed with the distinctive architecture of each species, creating a space that honored all equally. "The Terran Alliance doesn't seek to replace one empire with another," she explained, her words translated simultaneously by devices developed through collaboration between human and axolotl linguists. "Each world that joins us gains not only protection, but a voice in our shared future." A Mendari elder, his crystalline exoskeleton still bearing the scars of Imperial control implants, raised his sensory stalks. "The humans speak of freedom, but what guarantees do we have that they won't become the next empire once the Grixians are defeated?" Washington didn't immediately answer. Instead, she activated a holographic display, showing the newly ratified Alliance Charter. "This is our guarantee. A constitution limiting central authority, ensuring planetary autonomy, and requiring supermajority approval for any military action not directly defensive in nature." She paused, meeting each alien delegate's gaze. "Humans have a long history of both freedom and tyranny. We've learned, often painfully, that power must be constrained by law and shared decision-making. We've built these lessons into the very foundation of the Alliance." Admiral Cathax reviewed the latest intelligence reports with growing despair. The rebellion had spread to 37 systems now, far faster than Imperial forces could respond. Worse, the insurgents were no longer using only captured Imperial technology. They were developing hybrid systems that combined the unique biological capabilities of various species with human ingenuity. "The Vril High ships," he muttered, studying footage of the insectoid's devastating attack on an Imperial fortress. "We kept them as miners for 12 generations, never suspecting." His intelligence officer, a rare Grixian female whose analytical skills had earned her a position usually reserved for males, completed his thought. Never suspecting they could be warriors, the humans recognized their potential immediately. Cathax stared at the galactic map, watching as system after system flickered from Imperial control to rebellion or outright Alliance membership. The pattern was clear now. The humans weren't just fighting the Empire. They were systematically dismantling it by turning its foundation, subjugated species, into its greatest threat. "They aren't conquering the galaxy," he realized aloud. "They're liberating it." Admiral Maya Okafor walked the gleaming halls of the new Concord chamber, pausing occasionally to marvel at the integration of architectural styles from 24 different species. 3 years ago, she had been coordinating desperate defensive measures from an underground bunker on Earth. Now, she represented humanity at the formal ratification of the Galactic Concord, the final transformation of the former empire into something unprecedented in the galaxy's history. Outside the massive observation windows, Earth gleamed blue and green in the distance, surrounded by the combined fleet of former enemies now turned allies. The ships themselves told the story of this remarkable transition. Grixian dreadnoughts now bore the markings of the Concord, their weapons reconfigured for defense rather than conquest. Vril hive ships darted between larger vessels, their crystalline structures catching the sunlight. Even axolotl living vessels, rare and sacred to their creators, had joined the gathering. "It's quite a sight, isn't it?" came a familiar voice behind her. Okafor turned to find Ambassador Cathax, formerly Admiral Cathax, his once imposing imperial armor replaced with the simplified diplomatic attire of the new Grixian Republic. "I never imagined standing here," she admitted. "When your ships first appeared above Earth, I was calculating how long humanity could survive." Thax's feeding tendrils rippled in what Okafor had come to recognize as thoughtful amusement. "And I never imagined my species could exist without the Empire. We defined ourselves by conquest for so long, we forgot there were other ways to live." In the central chamber, representatives from 100 worlds took their places in the circular arrangement that symbolized their equal standing. The former emperor, now simply Delegate Xantar, sat in a seat no larger or more ornate than any other, a transformation that would have been unthinkable months earlier. Dr. Sarambiki, now serving as Earth's chief xenoanthropologist, leaned toward General Okafor. "The most remarkable aspect isn't that we won the war," she whispered. "It's that we convinced them to change." The change hadn't come easily. Hardliners within the imperial structure had resisted fiercely, and several worlds remained under their control in distant sectors. But the momentum of transformation had proved unstoppable once it began. As the formal signing ceremony commenced, Okafor reflected on the true victory. Humanity could have destroyed the Grixians after gaining technological parity, could have become the new conquerors of the galaxy. Many had advocated for exactly that. But the same fractious history that had made humans such effective warriors had also taught them the futility of empires built on fear. Later, at the celebration that followed the signing, Cathax found Okafor gazing at the holographic map showing the extent of the new Concord, nearly 70% of the former empire, with more systems joining weekly. "There is a question I've wanted to ask since the day we signed the armistice," Cathax said. "Your species could have demanded far more than you did. You could have positioned yourselves as the new imperial power. Why didn't you?" Okafor smiled. "Because we've been on both sides of oppression in our history. We've been conquerors and conquered, colonizers and colonized. We learned the hard way that true strength comes not from domination, but from cooperation." She gestured to the diverse gathering around them. "This, species working together as equals, this is humanity's greatest victory. Not the worlds we helped liberate, but the future we're building together."